Well, hello all. Today I'd like to talk about the subject of the Earth being 13.8 billion years old and how young Earth creationists insist that Genesis 1 says that the Earth is 6,000 years old, when science clearly says that the universe has to be much older. And when you look at the geological record and all the different biomes that existed in the past, the dinosaurs, the Cambrian, etc., you can see that all these different biomes existed for billions of years or millions, not billions, millions of years, and then ceased to be, and then a new one came, and then it got destroyed, and a new one, and a new one. And you know what? Genesis 1 verse 1 says exactly that. So, I'd like to take us to Genesis and let's have a look what Genesis actually says. So if we go to Genesis 1 verse 1, it says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth." Now, if you look at the Hebrew, there's already three mistranslations in that very first verse of Genesis 1 verse 1. First of all, it doesn't say "in the beginning." There's no definite article there. It just says "to begin." Next mistranslation, God, it's Elohim, gods. That's the second mistranslation. Created the heaven, doesn't say heaven, it's Shamayim. It ends in im, and so that's heavens and the earth. So it should read, "To begin, gods created the heavens and the," definite article, earth. Okay. Doesn't say when, doesn't say 6,000 years ago, doesn't say 13.8 billion years ago. Just says, "To begin, or once upon a time, gods created the heavens and the earth." In fact, there are three heavens, so it's not just the heaven. Then it goes on to say, "And the earth was without form and void." So, and the earth was. Now here is the biggest single mistranslation in Genesis 1 verse 2. Because if we go to Strong's, let's click on Strong's, and the word "was." So here is the word "was," Hebrew 1961. We click on "was," and it's Hayya. Hayya is the Hebrew, and it says, one translation is "to become." So earth became. To happen, to fall out, to occur, to take place. So if we go back, earth could have, this word here could have just easily been "became" without form and void. And clearly, in fact, earth became without form and void, because in Isaiah 45, what is it? Isaiah 45 verse 18. Let's just have a look. I think it's that. Isaiah 45 verse 18. "For thus says the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He has established, he created it not in vain." Now that word "vain" is exactly the same word that is used in Genesis, tohu and bohu. So he didn't create it formless, empty space, or a wasteland. So Genesis 1 verse 2 says, "And the earth became tohu," or was tohu. And here in Isaiah 45 verse 18, it says that God did not create it tohu. So it must have become tohu, or empty, or wasteland, a place of chaos, vanity. So here are all translations of tohu: formless, confusion, empty, nothing, empty space, chaos. So God did not create it this way. And if you had to really think about it logically in Genesis 1 verse 1, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth." And did God created it in a form that was tohu and bohu, without form and void? No. When God does something, he does something beautiful and perfect. It's almost like now the earth is messed up and it's without form and void, and its darkness covers the face of the deep. Now, bear in mind that not one day of Genesis has passed yet, and we say there's an earth. And it's this earth is without form and void, but God hasn't created anything yet. How do you explain that? This is day one. On day one, God says, let there be light, and there was light. He doesn't say, let there be an earth. So we're already starting with an earth, and the earth is without form and void and in darkness. I just hope you have the eyes to see this, that obviously what's happened is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and then the earth, which was created whenever, and science tells us it's 13.8 billion years ago, the earth that had been created in Genesis 1 verse 1 became chaotic and in confusion and darkness. So if you go to the geological record, and I say that science and theology tie up perfectly, especially in Genesis 1, to explain each other. So God, you could call it, the science calls it the Big Bang, created the universe, and then about 5 billion years ago, the earth came into existence, and then 500 million years ago, the first life was found on earth. This is what more or less science says. I'm not arguing with the science. I don't care about the science. I'll take whatever date they give me, because the Bible here in Genesis doesn't contradict it. It just says the earth became without form and void. In other words, this is a mass extinction. And if you go to the geological record, after the Cambrian, and then the Ordovician mass extinction, and then the Silurian, the Devonian, the Carboniferous, and all the different eras in the geological past, ended more or less with a mass extinction and the creation of a whole new species and a whole new biome and a whole new earth with all its food chains. And you can see that their food chains were specific to that time. For example, a dinosaur would not fit in a food chain here on Earth today, because all the prey would be too small, it'd be hungry and be chasing these rather fast mammals. And so dinosaur food chain requires dinosaurs to feed it. So if you look at each biome throughout the geological column, they've had their appropriate, primary, or plants, the primary producers, and then the secondary consumers, and so on. They've had all their appropriate, it's been appropriate, and we have an appropriate one here on Earth today, but it's a modern one. And so what I'm saying is that the Earth had become without form, meaning and void, and was covered with a nuclear winter. So there'd been a mass extinction. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Look, this is day one. There's waters, there's earth, there's a whole lot of stuff, and God hasn't even said a single word of creation, and yet there's an earth that's without form and void and dark, and there's waters. How do you explain that? Because in Genesis 1 verse 1 they were created. And you see, what would also not make sense is that the heavens and the earth were not created simultaneously. The Big Bang occurred, let's say, 13.8 billion years ago. That's God's creation event. And then the earth only came into being about 6 billion years ago. So the earth and the heavens were not created at the same time. So Genesis 1 verse 1 reads, to begin, God's created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't say they created them at the same time. It's not in the beginning, a specific beginning, because we know that the earth was created slowly over billions of years with a conglomeration of stuff that gathered together from the universe, that just formed together. So this is not trying to say that at a specific time God created, boom, everything perfectly like we see it today. No, it's not stating how it came to be. But at a certain point, the earth was without form and void. So this is after a mass extinction, this is the Holocene that we're talking about here, that God is about, the age of man. And so God, the Spirit of God, now notice, moves upon the face of the waters. The Spirit of God is hovering at the surface of this earth that is covered with water. It's been a nuclear winter, mass extinction, earth is flooded, and the Spirit of God is now sitting upon the earth's watery surface. And God, from that vantage point, says, let there be light, and there was light. So now light from what light? I challenge any other people telling me what light is. Oh, it's an ethereal God light. We can't say what light it is. I can tell you exactly what light it was. The sunlight. There was already a sun present at this, and this time could have been about 12,000 years ago. It could have been 6,000 years ago. I'm not going to argue with when it was, but light now filters through to the waters covering the earth, and this is sunlight. So God says, clear the sky, let there be a filtering of, this is diffuse light that comes through to the surface of the earth. So that's what he did on day one. So notice the earth, its waters, and everything was created long before God said, let there be light. So the timing, I'm going to say, let's let science do a little bit of explaining when the timing occurs, because the Bible doesn't say, give a date when all this occurred. So just keep an open mind that Genesis 1 is saying, in some indefined time in the past, or once upon a time, God's created the heavens and the earth. We're not going into a scientific explanation. He didn't even say they occurred at the same time. It just says they were the ones responsible for creating the heavens and the earth. And now the earth's without form and void, and the Spirit of God is sitting at a very specific spot, which is on the surface of the water. And from that spot, God says, let there be light, and light filters down to the waters. And so now Genesis 1 verse 3, and God said, let there be light, there was light. And God saw the light, it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning was the first day. Now notice there's an evening and a morning. This is long before day 4 of creation. The light is getting dimmer and dimmer, and that's the evening, and then it gets brighter and brighter, and that's the morning. So already this light is acting just like the normal sun, and it's creating an evening and a morning. Now, how can you have an evening and a morning without the sun and the rotation of the earth? There has to be a sun, and there has to be an earth, and the earth has to be rotating, and that rotation is creating a changing of light. So already in Genesis 1, without the supposed creation of the sun, and yet I'm saying the sun was created whenever, 6 billion years ago. And this is not contradicting it. God is saying, let's call this changing light and dark day and night. Now, God said, let there be a firmament. That means a clear opening space in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. So the firmament means clear sky. So God cleared the atmosphere, so you had the water above, that's the clouds, separated from the water below, which is the sea. So now, instead of the clouds coming directly down to the sea and creating this darkness, you're clearing you separating the waters, which means the water vapor, the clouds, from the water liquid, which are the seas, and in between is a nice clear space, and sun can shine through there. So on day 2, God creates a clear sky. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So bear in mind, we still have days, which would have been impossible without the sun to have already been present and the earth rotating, etc. So all that God is doing is creating clear sky in the second day. The first day he creates light coming through to the surface. The second day he creates clear sky. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the water called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and herb yielding seed, and fruit trees yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit whose seed was in itself. That's angiosperms were created now. This is a modern creation of angiosperms. Their seed is in itself. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day. So on this day, God separates the water so that the mountains stick, he drains the water from the earth so that the mountains stick up through the water of the earth. And at that same day, he plants all these herbs. This has to be done miraculously, folks, because I don't think in one 24-hour day you could drain the sea and plant, you could drain water from off the earth and plant all these things, and the water would take a long time to drain. But God is doing all this supernaturally, so he can do what he likes, and he can do it as fast as he likes. And so in that third day, God has drained the ocean, or pushed the mountains up through the seas, whichever. I think he probably drained the oceans into some, maybe there was a huge chasm or something that occurred in, however, maybe there's some sort of terraforming going on, and the seas are being drained as they are in the modern era, and the mountains are sticking up, and God is planting all the herbs on the third day. And notice there's a day, so there has to be a sun to create the day. And it says there's an evening and a morning. So as the earth rotates, you're getting lighter and lighter. It's the morning, and as it rotates, you get darker and darker, and that's the evening. We have an earth, it's rotating, it's evening and morning. We obviously have a sun already. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give their light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the night from the darkness. And God saw it was good, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. Now let me tell you what's happening here. Because God has cleared the sky enough, you can see the lights that were already there. The sun and the moon were already there. The stars were already there. But what God is doing on this fourth day is he's appointing them, it says, for signs and seasons, for days and years. So now you can see the sun, you can see the moon, you can see the stars, you can see everything clearly enough that God is just on this fourth day appointing these heavenly bodies to be for signs and for seasons. And really what he's saying is for days and years. He's thinking in terms of moeds, or holy day seasons, and for equinox seasons. You can tell the equinox by when the days and nights are of equal length. You can tell that the feast, he's got his feasts in mind. And he says, and let them be for light in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. So he's appointing them. Now, I'll give you an example. After the flood, God said the rainbow is appointed to be a sign that God will never flood the earth. It's not that there weren't rainbows before God appointed the rainbow of Noah to be a sign. He's saying, let the rainbow now be a appointment of, or a reminder that he'll never flood the earth again. It's not that there weren't rainbows before God made this covenant. It's just like there were sun and moon and stars in the sky, but now they've appeared, they're clear, and God is appointing them to be for signs and for seasons, holy day seasons. Just like when God rested on the Sabbath, it wasn't the first day that the first seventh day there's ever been, but on that seventh day God rested and appointed, by resting on the Sabbath, that it would be a Sabbath day in perpetuity for mankind to rest on. So it's not that there hadn't been days before, it's just by God resting on it, it becomes by his action a Sabbath day. So we're seeing the same thing occurring here, that clearly, I mean, the fact that we've got evenings and mornings long before the fourth day shows that God is just now appointing the sun and the moon and the stars for signs and seasons. And notice also that the plants that God had created on the third day were angiosperms. These are all modern plants. So this is the modern Holocene, or the age of man plants, angiosperms, the kind of plants we see today, flowering plants with fruits, etc., and flowers, and all the modern plants and animals. So then on the fifth day, God says, and let the waters bring forth abundantly moving creatures that has life. So he creates fish and fowl that may fly. So he creates the animals and the fish, or the birds and the fish, the things that swim in the sea and the things that fly in the air. And God created great whales and so on. And God blessed them, be fruitful and multiply. In the evening and the morning were the fifth day. And then on the sixth day, God says, and let the earth, now God goes to the earth and he says, let the earth bring forth living creatures after his kind. So now God's creating the land animals, all the modern land animals after his kind, cattle after their kind, sheep, fowls, and everything that creeps upon the earth. Now, what is quite interesting, if you go to the fossil record, you find that all the domesticated animals, the sheep, the dog, the cattle, the doves, are modern. They don't go back into the geological past. If you look beyond about 12,000 years ago, you can't find these animals. These domesticated animals were created with Adam and with mankind for him to live side by side with and to feed upon and so on, to get wool from. So these domesticated animals, I'm talking about animals like doves, dogs, sheep, cattle, the domesticated modern animal did not exist in there as we see them today before 12,000 years ago. So you could say, oh, well, dogs came from wolves, etc. That's just your speculation. But even so, think about sheep. These animals, where do they come from? You can see they need mankind almost to survive. I'm not a sheep farmer, but I presume that sheep will just get wiped out if you don't have man around. So sheep and goats were created with Adam so that he could benefit from them. And they are looked after by man. And as far as I know, they can't survive without, well, goats can survive, but sheep can't. So they were created with man as a blessing to man. So here we go. So after God has created all the land animals, then God creates man in our image. So then God creates Adam. And so God created man in his own image, in the image of God. And then he takes a rib and he creates Eve. This is a summary of what's happening. Genesis 2 explains it in more detail. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So Adam was created after the animals on the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. It's not like there hadn't been a seventh day before. It's just that now God is setting apart the seventh day and sanctifying that particular day. Just like there had been sun and moon and whatever, but he'd now appointed them in the fourth day of creation as being for signs and for seasons. So this is explaining how God has gone through and he's created a whole new modern creation. And let's say it was 6,000 years ago as the young earth creation. He has, after a mass extinction, and there've been many mass extinctions in the past. After a mass extinction, God has created now this modern biome, this modern new whole era. And and Genesis explained how he did it. And he did it in 6 literal 24-hour days. And he's made these new heavens and this new earth and these new plants and these new animals, and how he did it. And everything that's new included Adam and Eve. And this is all created by God. So he did create it in 7 days, this new modern biome, but it's only the latest of many. It's the last of many. And so now we go to science, and science says, oh, well, the universe is 13.8 billion years old, and the Bible doesn't contradict it. So fine, let's go with that. In the beginning, God's created the heavens and the earth. So let's call it a Big Bang, as they call it, and there's no argument about the time. If the science says that it's 13.8 billion years ago, I'm happy until they change it and they say, no, it was a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change theology at all. But this, what Genesis 1 is explaining, is a new, after each era in the geologic column, there's been a mass extinction and a new creation. Mass extinction, new creation. Mass extinction, new creation. And if you could go to the Cambrian explosion, well, after the Precambrian came this massive creation event called the Cambrian explosion, which is exactly the same sort of event as is described here in Genesis chapter 1. This is a new explosion of life in a newly created biome. Whole new ecosystems, whole new food chains, everything new is created, and now it's created suitable for man to live in. The Holocene, the age of man. And so after each mass extinction, there came a new creation. So God is a creator. He didn't just create once, he created multiple times at multiple biomes at multiple times. And this is just the latest one that is being described in Genesis 1 verse 1.